guys in the dark.
I had 3 aliases which I used, but only a close online friend of mine knew that all were mine. Nathan was my main link to the dark web, since he somehow spent more time on it than I did, even when the only thing I did other than ghosting him was playing Halo with him for my friends list. What I liked about him is that neither of us mentioned our last names or any real information, even though we both could have looked it up at the time and found pretty much whatever we wanted about the other person. That being said, I trusted Nathan more than almost anyone, and he knows more about this story than I'll be willing to admit on here. During university, I roomed with a local dealer who, unknown to the education board that expelled him, worked for me. It was freaking easy to order narcotics online like MDMA and X if you knew where to look. I even had them shipped to my dorm room's local P.O. box at one time without anyone being any of the wiser. I'd get them online. My former friend would use his real-life connections to sell them once I didn't really have any of my own. This was around the time that I felt that I held all the cards, and no one could touch me if they couldn't track my IP address. I was in the second year of my biomed course when I got into the stupid shit. Scumbag pieces of crap would be sharing snuff videos online that would make even the most messed up pornography you laid eyes upon look freaking like white bread. This was why I only used links that I either found myself, or more often the ones that Nathan had given me. We would spend days, literally days, just marveling at all the crazy shit which people could get away with. Yeah, the government had shut down the main sites like Silk Road and Mad Onion, but those were like the only ones that the idiots online seemed to ever take notice of. Other hackers would message me on forums asking for sites to get weed and other drugs from, which was as simple as pointing in a freaking direction. The university claimed to monitor internet traffic to stop people from doing freaky things online after they heard people were hacking students' accounts and ruining online schedules. But I guarantee you that they did absolutely nothing to people who were actually doing it. Note, I'm not confessing to having done any of these acts. I just know exactly which individuals have done it. By third year, I had made enough money to have a long screen setup of my own, which made decrypting sites' details a lot quicker for me. And I actually had gotten pretty good at it. I had been delving around some messed up sites, and to be honest, I'd even talked in chat rooms to some of the admins in charge of them. You'd be surprised how normal a child actor site owner would actually seem if you didn't know he also had a day job. I got more curious, though. Stupid me. After nearly 10 years of seamless making my way out of the dark web, I joined Nathan as well as a few others in the chat room, just screwing about and sharing some screwed up sites. Might sound weird, but for me it's a pretty everyday thing to do. Nathan and another friend were talking about some site that no one had managed to get past the encryption, to apart from one of the other people who's even more of a no-life than me. The rest of us are pretty sure he's autistic or some crap, because the site he shared with us was arguably the most vile thing I've ever laid eyes upon. For those of you still with me, this is why I'm posting this here. This guy is the most cancerous and revolting sector from the darkest part of the deep web. It is a scar that I bear to this day, and it is one that I will never, ever forget. The site had a subheading in the HTML. The autistic dude was in the chat room earlier and gave Nathan and I an encrypted URL for us, but he was too freaking giddy about getting through to the site himself to send us an encryption. So Nathan and I had to manually go through the whole process ourselves. We tried for hours. Nathan and I had been doing this for the entirety of our adult lives, yet we've never seen code like this before. Come to think of it, I doubt that the other guy in the chat cracked this by himself. Nathan and I both called it a night, so I left the command prompt open and went outside to smoke. Nathan remained on the chat so we can play Anvil, but when I got back, his microphone was muted for some reason. For people like us who had nothing to hide from each other, we almost never muted our mics. I waited a few minutes, thinking maybe he was jerking off or maybe gone to do something. Nothing. I don't think much of it, my brain is too occupied with the cannabinoids flowing through my bloodstream. I sat down and took another look through the code, thinking there was something that I missed. I did. The code was completely different this time, completely unencrypted. I simply launched the URL and my PC Word for a little bit, until finally opening up about 20 windows across my 2 monitors, all of them scrambling code through a debugger that I had installed. Even with 32 gigabytes of RAM, my computer was making more noise than it ever did doing this kind of stuff. I thought to myself, shit, I'm going to have to OC my shit in the BIOS if I was going to have a shot of getting through. And I was not feeling up for it after smoking too much. I get ready to hard reset before my monitors turn off, and back on one at a time. This was when I started getting a bit paranoid and was thinking about just letting it go. I wish that that's what I did. The windows were almost all gone. Only 4 still were there, and 2 of them were normal deep web sites that the admin probably used to relay the IP address through. First site that I had seen do that. All of the text was a dark red, and extremely primitive for a site that I thought would be at least a little bit more impressive considering its security. The main center window had only a small amount of text on the screen. If you made it this far, you know what you were in for. If you still don't, you don't belong here. Even though I was feeling mellow, the text and sheer awe of what I was getting myself into pierced me with fear. A simple Y/N prompt popped up on my window. I accepted, ready for whatever awaited me on the other side. A chat room window came up to life in the second remaining window. I was wondering what it was for. Perhaps another IP relay, or a shadow app that hid the true nature of the site behind it. It simply stated, /insert name, as well as an optional password that I'm still not sure what that was for. The fact that people might have accounts on this kind of site. Looking back on it, it's pretty fucked up. I used my most recent alias, Diablo. A couple more scrolls of red text flew up the window, and then it opened up into an actual sort of chat room like you'd see on Omegle or some crap like that. Except with no ads, or color, or anything besides the dark red text. The chat was a bit more advanced than the first window, which was now frozen and wasn't responding to any console commands I was using. I have to say, the feeling of finding this site in the first place felt pretty awesome. I couldn't wait to tell Nathan. That was until the chat window popped up with names. One that I recognized was his, using one of his aliases as well. I'd say about 36 people were in the chat room. No names that I can remember. And even if I did, I wouldn't dare reveal them. Not after all this. I tried calling Nathan on my phone, but he obviously wasn't picking up. We're so screwed. It was stupid of us to delve this deep without even knowing what we got ourselves into. Users definitely had met before, as they immediately started posting messages to the window, as me and Nathan remained silent. As they were casually talking about stuff, I was starting to calm down a bit. Maybe this was just a stupid cult website that talked about organizing deals or other dumb stuff that I found in the past. It all seemed so normal. So why all the obscurity? The first window, still blank and unresponsive, suddenly began loading up a video file of some sort. A snuff video, perhaps? It would make sense to hide one, but not this extensively, and the chat room didn't make much sense. I wish this stuff had been going through my head at the time, if I wasn't retarded enough to get stoned before going through this. I felt tempted to ask the other users what the video was about, but I was afraid that might give me away as someone who's not supposed to be there. Nathan hadn't said anything either, so I wasn't going to risk doing something suspicious like that. I got the guts to ask, "What are we all here for, thanks?" Trying to sound as eccentric and dim-witted as I could. I didn't get a response from them. As a matter of fact, no one said another word. Nathan stayed quiet, but I assumed that he noticed me in the chat as well, now that I'd posted. The video had stopped loading and had begun playing. Some more messages from the other users sharing their anticipation as footage of a dark gray basement somewhere took shape on the screen. The resolution of the video was pretty awful at first, but rendered pretty well after about 30 seconds. I was scared shitless. No one else was in my house. Most of my roommates had left for summer vacation, and I didn't head home for another 2 weeks. I was alone in the dark with little else but the ambient sound of whatever was happening behind the camera in the video. It stayed like this for about 4 or 5 minutes. I spent every second of it staring at the screen, waiting for something to happen. Finally, a dude steps onto the screen holding up a whiteboard with foreign letters on it, as well as the words "cold body" underneath. The guy was freaking ominous to look at, pretty overweight, and what only could be described as a motorbiker's beard. The man spoke. I had no idea what he was saying at first. He was speaking in Chinese, I think, but I don't really know. I'm not a fucking linguist. Luckily for Nathan and I, the man had another person behind him who spoke some broken English. "Hello, users. Welcome to Cold Body Show." I think that's what he said. I was honestly more interested than scared at this point. This video looked like it could be something worth showing to others. That thought never crossed my mind again. The man with the broken English bursts into tears and sobs out of nowhere. He sobs in front of the camera and jerks around in what I can only guess was desperation. The man holding the sign yells at the guy in Chinese before another man enters the frame and puts a gun to his head. Before I can even realize it was a gun, the man fired. He didn't stop there. Pressing the barrel of the gun against the dead man's temple, he fired again and again, each shot spraying blood and what I guess were mere pieces of the skull all over the place. Okay, so a shock video. Not much out of the ordinary here. That was when I stared at the chat window again. The users were talking about what they would do next. Users were all typing in different languages, but almost all of the English ones that I read said, "Shoot him again." I realized then that I wasn't watching some shock video or stupid snuff film that the admins had hid behind the wall of proxies. This was a live stream. I was watching a live stream of people getting murdered in front of me. We all were. I type into the chat, "You sick fucks. And what the heck are you guys doing?" But the texts weren't responded to because so many people were spamming the chat with foreign text that I couldn't read. Another person is brought out in front of the camera, this time already sobbing and trying to break free of the ropes that had been bound around her ankles and wrists. She was bare naked and covered in bruises and cuts. I didn't do anything but wait for the inevitable. The man shot her in the head and watched her body fall limp on the floor. People in the chat cheered and asked for more. Someone picks up the camera and positions it in a different direction towards a metal table, covered with some sort of bin liner. The woman was dragged by the hair into the frame and placed on the table. What happened next? I don't think the world should know. I'm not kidding. The body was slumped on the table like a surgeon would do before operating on a person. Some more people, wearing red and black ski masks, went up to the body holding items varying from kitchen knives to cordless drills. I couldn't watch without feeling physically sick to my stomach. The men tore her apart limb from limb, stabbing at her torso and cutting her open. I take another glance to see one of the men having relations with the mutilated corpse. I almost immediately retched and almost vomit over my keyboard when I gained control of myself before that happened. My heart was beating like crazy. The whole situation was so messed up, and I was in way over my freaking head. By the time the men were finished, there was a literal stump of a human being left. Not that they could fucking call that a human anymore. Her head was torn off, the neck, and stuffed into her body cavity along with one of her arms. If it weren't for the other weird sights that I have seen before this, I might not have stayed as long as I did. 3 more people were brought out onto the screen, all of them screaming for their lives and trying to escape. One of them is shot in the leg. The others stand there shaking in place, trying not to scream again. The man holding the sign walks up to the lens of the camera and stares into it. I see his black eyes, blood splattered across his face. I breathe faster, and I actually had to look away. It was like he was staring right at me. He says something else in a foreign language, probably the same one as before. When he stops speaking, the chat window does the same. Hardly a single other post, just a chat window awaiting some response. About 20 seconds pass of him just staring into the camera after speaking. Nothing happens at first. The chat then mentioned me and Nathan by our usernames. More of them spam our names in posts that take over the scrolling message board. As soon as they mentioned our aliases, I started freaking out. I try to close the black windows, but every time I try, the window says the application is not responding. The live stream continues. The man staring at me and the message prompting me to say something. One of the few comments in proper English pops up. He's asking us which one to end first. I freeze for about 5 seconds before unplugging my computer from the wall. I didn't care about anything anymore. I just wanted to leave the site and never come back. I sat there with a blank screen in front of me for a bit before pacing around the kitchen. I was done with it. I didn't sleep at all. I was too traumatized to even think about resting after what I had seen. At the time of this happening, I was thinking about reporting the site to the police, but I, of all people, know that they can't do anything to stop this. To think that more of these sites could exist, that more people are getting gunned down and mutilated for entertainment, it's something that I can't freaking think about. I spent 2 days talking to some close friends about this stuff, though I left out all the details and just said I'd seen something disturbing online. They all know what I do in my free time, so they didn't think much of it since I'd mentioned snuff films and messed up sites before. They didn't know what Nathan and I had seen. I mustered up the courage to turn on my PC again, and I was fucking relieved to see no sign of any viruses. And most of all, no black window screens scattered on my desktop. I immediately go to check to see if Nathan had left me any messages on Radot. I had several messages from him with a few files attached to the second. I was hoping to talk this whole ordeal through with him, but the files immediately caught my eye. The attachments were pictures of me, stolen from my Facebook and email. Pictures of my old school, university, and even my friends here. The messages after were all my addresses, email, online aliases, and even the names of my family members. My IP address was posted to the bottom, and I realized how screwed I am. The last picture of me and my old girlfriend, with her IP address and details pasted on the top of the picture. There's no freaking way that they tracked me down. I take a few minutes to pull myself together before writing back. What the fuck? I didn't get a response, and I still haven't to this day. He has all of my details. He knows everything about me and my family, and I don't even know what else. I still don't know what has happened to him since I left that live stream. I can only pray that the information he has doesn't fall into the hands of those murderous, insane motherfuckers who killed and desecrated dozens of people on the darkest parts of the internet. I can't let them find me, or those that I care about. I will never go back to that part of the internet ever again. It's not safe for me, or you, or anyone else. The police can't find them, but they can find you. Don't try and find the site. Don't try and report the site. They will do to you what they did to me. And if you think that they won't find you, then remember that I was fucking invisible.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.